Let me see here. If you love hip hop, let me hear you say yeah. Yeah. That's pretty good. I think we're awake. I think we're awake. All right. If I fall off the stage, please, just a Band-Aid is all I ask for. Listen, thanks everybody for coming out. Today is our first, even though it's kind of the second to last day here, this is our first panel discussion. And the importance of this panel discussion has to do with, obviously, the museum and the collection. And I want to thank everyone's support for coming out and checking out the collection and the gallery. Our panel today, and I'm going to introduce you to our panelists here in a moment, but the panel today is about why we must document and preserve hip-hop. It's a pretty obvious topic here for the Hip Hop Museum, but we want to get in depth, and we have some panelists. I'd like to just kind of like go around, and we're going to introduce the panelists, and if we can, just pass the microphone. They're going to say their name, and they're going to say their background and why they love hip hop. Okay? So very first and foremost, we're going to go to the co-founder of the museum, and the creative director, the founder, the heart, the brains behind the Bible of Hip Hop, the Source magazine. Everyone give a round of applause for Dave Mays!
So, you want me to...
Right, you're like, what are the questions again? All right, so one, I guess I kind of did your thing for you. Everyone knows who you are. So just tell everyone why you got into hip hop. I mean, as a 19-year-old kid in Harvard, starting the world's most illustrative, hip-hop magazine might not have been the most obvious direction. Why did you choose that direction?
Well, I'll try to keep this brief since we want to, I guess, get all the panelists introduced. But, I grew up actually here in Washington, D.C., so it was a little different for me. For anybody that's from D.C. knows, back in those days especially, it was all about go-go music. As rap music was getting popular all across the country, most of us here in D.C. was pretty much listening to go-go. But I did get exposed to rap through the radio stations here. So I heard Sugar Hill Gang when I was in 5th or 6th grade, Rapper's Delight on the radio, and I can remember reciting all the lyrics to that, and other records that made it here, like Curtis Below the Brakes was really big here, and Salt and Pepper, and a few others. So, I just grew up in this city, grew up just with a love for, black music and culture. And, when I got to college, it became much more focused on hip hop. And I guess at some point later, I'll talk a little more if it comes up about how the Source got started there at Harvard. But there weren't too many people into hip hop at Harvard in those days. One of them is here. Well, he was into it a little bit. One of them is here in the building. Actually, one of the other original founders of the Source magazine, Ed Young, is in the building. New Jersey native, yes. So,
round of applause for Ed.
He joined me my senior year and helped me and a couple of the other guys build the Source from a newsletter into the magazine and everything else it became. So, there you go.
There you go. And nominated for Music Book of the Year by the New York Times, the author of Contact High, Photographic History of Hip Hop. I probably bungled that all up, but a visual history of hip hop. Vikki Tobak, tell us about yourself and how you got into hip hop. Round of applause, everyone.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, thank you for having me. So I'll be brief too. I grew up in Detroit, a city that's rooted in black music, and really where music is a language for much bigger things. Society, race, just how you live your life. So I fell in love with the music as a teenager growing up in Detroit. I moved to New York when I was 19 and started working for a hip hop label called Payday Records Empire Management.
Woo, give it up for Payday, everyone.
We were actually at one point 2 doors down from the Source. We were 588 Broadway. Yeah. And just fell in love with it. I worked with a lot of the artists as their media liaison, working with a lot of photographers and art. This is how I came into archives later. And then from there, after working with a lot of the golden era groups for many years, I went on to be a journalist, started writing about hip hop for a lot of the early magazines, and on and on.
And fast forward to a book that is right now for sale, signed by Vikki in our hip hop shop. There's only a couple copies there. Please go get them, okay? Because that book is going to go down in history as a really definitive hip hop, history book. Speaking of hip hop history, the man who is responsible for all of our inductions, the man who is one half of Look, Listen, Learn every Thursday at 5, Master G's radio show. But the historian for the Hip Hop Museum is a very special cat to me because I was following him on Facebook for a long time, and he has a website called the Foundation. And the Foundation even helped me with my hip hop history and knowledge. And so if you want a more in-depth understanding of what we're trying to do with the Hip Hop Museum and the backstories, go to his website. Anyways, I always do too much. Give a round of applause for the one, the only, Quan!
Peace. 1, 2. All right, so yeah, and that website is foundationhiphop.com. You can go to YouTube and just look at Quan and Foundation. But so the questions are, okay, so I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia. How'd you get started in hip hop?
Well, I was already into records before hip hop. I was already into soul records, jazz. My parents had an extensive record collection, so I was always a record guy. And into 1979, this guy beside me, as 1/3 of the Sugar Hill Gang, put out a song called Rapper's Delight.
You don't say.
Yeah. And at that moment, I knew what I was put here to do. And a few years later, Grandmaster Flash, his label mate, put out a record called Adventures on the Wheels of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, you scratch the records and mix them too. And at that moment, all of it came together. And fast forward to like maybe the end of right around the beginning of the 2000s, I started a website to chronicle the history of hip hop before Run DMC, because I felt like that particular time period was not covered well. So I started little biographies of people like Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5, the Cold Crush, Spoonie G, Fantastic Five, all the groups pre-record.
What's that poster I saw you posted the other day that I really want very badly?
Oh man, the Funky 4+1, the original poster, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little teeny museum in my house.
I see.
My little music room. So from there, I just started doing little mini documentaries and things like that on the internet, and it's caught on. And I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of the people that I chronicle, and they okayed my work and actually co-signed my work. In fact, last year, LL Cool J called me at home to tell me how much he liked the piece that I did on him. So that was like, that was incredible.
I think when LL Cool J calls you at home,
Yes.
You've come of age.
Definitely. So you're here. That one was official. It was official. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay. I'm gonna do something here. Let's see if you guys know the lyrics. Hip, hop, hip, hip,
Hip, hip, hop, you don't stop the rockin' to the bang, bang boogie. Say up, jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogity beat.
Well, guess who's here? Master G, the founding member of the Sugar Hill Gang. Give him a round of applause.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. So you don't have.
No, my
say
thing
much.
with my thing with rap music is that 15 I was DJing and rapping in the northern New Jersey area, Englewood, Hackensack, Teaneck area. Shout out to Englewood. I just came from there last night. We did a concert in my hometown at the John Arms Burger Pack, for anybody that's been up there. And that's the first time we did a major concert in our hometown in the 40 years that we've been making music. So last night was a pretty big night for us. And I was doing parties and high school dance hall parties, etc. Somebody turned me on to rapping, and I met Sylvia in front of a pizza parlor on the block, and she thought I was cute. And then I had a little style. And so she asked me to come to the studio, and I cut Rappers Delight, and then after Rappers Delight, we cut Apache, and after Apache, etc. The list goes on. And Eighth Wonder, yeah. Then we went overseas a couple of years ago and cut a record with Bob Sinclair, and we've been doing this thing, like I said, for 40 years, and now I'm embarking on a new chapter in my life because I am now doing radio show. It's called Look, Listen, and Learn. I'm doing it with Jeremy and Quan, and I'm loving love, and I'm loving to see everybody, and thanks for coming out.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't be here without him, right? We would not. Well, you know, somebody who has a very different perspective on hip-hop, a satirical perspective on hip-hop, is actually, you know, one of my favorite parts of The Source magazine. So, of course, growing up with The Source, you know, it was the Bible for us, that goes without saying, but there was this cherry on top on every single issue. Final word, last word? Last word. The last word was that page when you're sitting there on the toilet and, you know, your legs start falling asleep. You know what I mean? You guys, one of the greatest hip-hop illustrators of all time, André LeRoy Davis, is in that.
So with me, I love music in general, but then I heard King Tim III in like '79. That opened my ears to it, learned the lyrics right away. Then I stopped listening to it the minute I heard Rapper's Delight. And most people don't mention King Tim III, but that was my intro. And then just being in the streets of Brooklyn with block parties, hearing the DJ cut up Good Times for the first time, made me choose hip hop. Since I loved all the other music before that, I chose to love hip hop because it just hit my spirit, hit my soul. As a 13-year-old kid, there was nothing else to listen to after that. And then I was able to combine my illustrative love of hip hop and comic books together. I was doing the same thing more or less that I did in high school, making fun of people. And then started doing it for The Source and got paid to do it. So, that's the way I look at it.
Professional prankster, André LeRoy Davis. And now, the last panelist is actually someone that you all know, you just didn't realize you know her. Give a round of applause for the woman responsible for every single display in the Hip Hop Museum. And it's not just that. That's only part of it. Are you ready for this part? She did it in 30 days. Every single thing you see, and I'm getting chill bumps just saying that. Every single item you see in that gallery was put together by just a couple individuals, and Red was leading them, and it was in just 30 days. And we didn't actually think that it could be done. In fact, I think we were pretty certain it wouldn't be done. But it was done. And so let's ask you, why hip-hop? I mean, you're a museum specialist. Many different types of things out there. Why hip-hop?
When I was 9 years old, one of my neighbors came by to get a beanie, like a little hat, to put on his hand because everybody was going to the Y and they were going to do a breakdance battle. And I, of course, was 9. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. But it continued at the Y, just in my neighborhood. Every week, everybody would come and they would beatbox and they would break dance, and they were, you know, I'm from Chicago, so it was new for us. We were a house music city, right? And I just understood that this was important. And on my panel, my graduate panel, with my degree in museum studies, they asked me, what do you want to do with this degree? And I was coming to DC, so of course I was going to work at the Smithsonian. But I said, I want to open up a museum dedicated to hip hop. And the whole panel just said, okay. And I didn't know how that was going to happen. I just knew it was something that was important to me. The culture is important to me. Preserving culture is important to me. And I was able to just find the right time to connect with the right people, and we were able to make it happen. Awesome.
You know, a quick story about Red, very quick, is that when we were first launching the museum and we had put out maybe just the very first post ever, we didn't even make a Facebook event yet. We didn't have an Eventbrite. We didn't even have the launch party, nothing. I got a Facebook DM from Red. Hey, you'll never believe this, but I've always wanted to do a hip hop museum, and I have a background in museum studies. Can I help you? And it was just like a sign from God. Like, wow. I didn't know who we would have tapped to help us had she not done that. So forever we are in debt to you. here we are, hip hop's about 45 years old. We're on the 40th anniversary of the biggest breakthrough single, Rapper's Delight. And, we got a panel of, let's call us OGs, make us feel good about it. We got a panel of OGs, okay? And I want to pose this question because I'm looking around the room and I see some other OGs in the room, with all due respect. And I think there's come a little bit of a divide in hip hop. And I think one of the important aspects of the museum, as Dave reminds me every day, is to try to bridge the generational gap, right? So that, trap music and auto-tune doesn't live in a separate world, from the origins and the foundation of hip hop, okay? And this question is actually a J. Quan question because it makes a lot of sense, but what as elders can we do to correct some of the things that we see as being problematic in hip hop? Okay, so J. Quan, you did ask the question, so now I'm asking you to answer your own question.
Well, that's a good question. I didn't think I would be answering.
I didn't know you were
answering somebody else. I'm curious myself. That's a complex question. I think that we have to call out. We have to call it out when we see it. The foulness that we see and what we see as not carrying the tradition of what we started. We have to be careful to call it out in a way that's not judgmental towards the young people. I think the first thing we need to do is we need to define hip hop. I think it's never been properly defined. There's rap music, which is a part of hip hop, but hip hop is a subculture. I was in a record store, digging for records last year, and they had a hip hop section. The record side, they had a rap section. And it was
You gotta be kidding me.
I took a picture of it. It's on my Facebook. But
what were the artists in
it was no difference. You
just couldn't even figure it out.
Scarface records in the hip hop section, and something that would be his contemporary in the rap section. It's just two different sections.
Yeah.
So I think that's never been completely defined. I think we need to start with a good definition.
Actually, speaking of that, we got an article in the Washingtonian about the Hip Hop Museum, and the entire article, instead of using the word hip hop, said we were a rap museum. And as appreciative as we are for being in one of the hoitiest, uppity up magazines, I took real issue with that. Right. And I actually made a point to tell people not to be too hard on the journalists because he was such a young person.
I was going to say, it's kind of not their fault. Well, it's not their fault because we never defined it in the first place.
We never told them.
Not on a huge level. So you wouldn't expect people to know. The other thing that I believe that's absolutely necessary, and you kind of alluded to it at first, other genres of music, you have rock music, but you have soft rock, you have classic rock, you have heavy metal, you have 4 or 5 different subgenres. With hip hop, Soulja Boy, whoever, on the radio every 5 minutes down, cats like Kendrick, J. Cole, they're all lumped into
the same category.
Same categories, cats to do boom bap.
Right.
And there's so many worlds of difference between those artists. I'm not going to say some are more hip hop than others, but they are different. They come from a different place. So I think we do need to have, just for the sake of clarification.
Well, let's finalize that point that you're making, sort of, because, so let's talk about rock. Rock has soft rock, all rock, heavy metal.
Right.
Maybe then the perspective shouldn't be to lump all of hip hop into one big thing.
That's just a sneak peek at our panel discussion of why we must document and preserve hip hop history and culture. As you can see or saw, it is a phenomenal panel, amazing discussion. If you're just joining us, you may want to come back and watch the replay. Today is an amazing day. I myself am overwhelmed with excitement. So we will be back with another live stream shortly. I just wanted to give you all a little taste of what's happening here today. All right, so this is your girl CLB checking in on behalf of the Hip Hop Museum DC. We look forward to you joining us. If you're in the DC area, there's still time. Come on through. We're gonna have a lot more happening today, and we look forward to seeing you. Hey Stoner, what's up? See you later.